If you haven't played Celeste yet, you're missing out because it's one of the best 2D platformers I've ever played. It blew my mind that a small indie game company can put together something that contains the most creative level design, top-notch retro-inspired music tracks, and a touching story that puts AAA game companies to shame. Developed by Matt Makes Games, who's actually a guy named Matt Thorson and a handful of others, the game originally released back in January 2018, but already feels like a timeless classic. Celeste is a celebration of classic SNES games I grew up playing as a kid. It takes the simple concept of ice climbers, the tough-as-nails platforming from Mega Man, and the fantastic music tracks similar to 16-bit SNES and Sega Genesis remix beats. While it feels reminiscent, it plays like nothing else that has come before. Yes, it may fall into the challenging platformer category along with Super Meat Boy or N+, but it is also a game that stands apart because of its unique story, art style, and characters. The last 2D platformer I played that left this much of an impact had to be Braid, released a decade before. While Braid had a more puzzle focus, Celeste's creative platforming and level design also led to those eureka moments when you figure out how to get past a challenge. This is most showcased in the B-side and C-side levels that are unlocked and completely optional, but figuring out what you need to do and executing it is a completely different skill set. Luckily, the controls are super precise, so it's up to your fast reflexes and sometimes building muscle memory to get you from point A to point B. I played the game on the Switch with a Pro Controller, which probably helped out a lot, because letting your thumb drift slightly or not pressing the jump button at the exact precise time can lead to starting again from the most recent checkpoint. The dashing ability has 8 fixed directions, or 45-degree increments, so sometimes I would mistakenly dash to the right instead of the upper right direction, even though that was what I thought I was doing. Other than that, you have full control of your character, especially while Celeste is in the air, that allows you to make adjustments while she is falling to avoid obstacles or move closer to ledges to grab onto. Grabbing the very tip of the ledge with the rest of your body dangling feels extremely satisfying, like a real climber. The game is always throwing new mechanics at you to keep each of the 8 chapters feeling fresh and exciting. Some include this blob that you can dash through that propels you forward, a reflector that bounces you off like a pinball machine, and fierce winds that propel you forward or push against you so you can barely move without dashing. While the gameplay is enough to sell the game, it also revolves around a unique story that will linger with you that you don't see much in other platformers. Of course, I could go into the obvious metaphor of the mountain, but other themes and real-life struggles soon take center stage. The game also includes nicely drawn character portraits for dialogue and end-stage screens that make it easier to connect to the 2D pixel art you are looking at most of the time. The optional B-side and C-side missions I mentioned earlier is where the challenge really ramps up, and contains some of the most difficult, inventive, and rewarding platforming stages I've ever seen in a game. The reason it doesn't become frustrating is not only because of the precise controls, but the way the game encourages you to experiment and respects your intelligence. It's surprising to see a game not give you hints or suggest lowering the difficulty level after multiple deaths. The game keeps track of how many times you die, and even after more than 1,000, you feel compelled to keep trying because you get a little further each time or figure out an easier way to tackle the problem. The checkpoints are also placed in perfect spots, so you don't have to replay large sections just to get back to where you were dying. After you die, you respawn in less than a second so you can immediately put what you learned to the test. This message sums up the game's approach to death, and as a full-time teacher, I love this concept, and I think about how I can encourage my students to learn the same way. I can't end without mentioning the music in the game. Really emphasizing the optional B and C-side missions, the soundtrack for these missions are truly stellar. Even after you die, the soundtrack continues so you don't have a lull in the music or repetition that could get dull really fast. It works together with the main idea that dying is part of the process, and the music reflects that perfectly. I'll keep this short and just say that this game is a masterpiece, and I was blown away that this is an indie game and one that everybody hasn't played yet. So if you haven't, download it now and let me know what your death count gets up to.